Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nandita Bajaj. I'm an educator in Toronto, Canada. I'm currently pursuing a graduate degree in humane education through the Institute for Humane Education. And it's through our common interest in this area that Elisabeth and I met about a year and a half ago. And that's where our journeys together began. And I'll speak more about my background a little bit later on when I do my part.
Thank you. Yeah, Nandita and I have become great friends through this journey. I'm very grateful. I'm Elisabeth Ormandy. I'm the co-founder of the Society for Humane Science. We just renamed our charity, so you might still see things floating out there in the public arena. We were the Animals in Science Policy Institute, but we've now changed our name. I think this new name better reflects our values as an organization, certainly myself as an individual. Before I get started this morning, I want to acknowledge that I am speaking today from the unceded ancestral land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I'm based here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm just going to jump right in. So today we're going to talk about humane science education, and I'm going to make the case for humane science education, and then Nandita can tell you a little bit about how she's approached this topic at her school, and we can get into the Society for Humane Science's Humane Science Education program. So there is a deeply held assumption that dissection, traditional animal dissection, is the best way to learn about anatomy and body systems. So dissection is actually pretty commonplace still in schools and universities. However, there is compelling evidence to show that non-animal teaching methods, things like virtual anatomy tools, are better for education, they're less costly for school budgets, they're safer and more inclusive for students, and they're the greener option in terms of their environmental impact. And they're also the ethical option, and here's why. So there are three principles that guide the ethical use of animals in science and science education, and they're called the 3 R's: replacement, reduction, refinement. I'm going to zero in on replacement here for a moment. So this principle tells us that if we can meet our scientific or educational goals without using animals, then it's an ethical obligation to use non-animal methods. So there's empirical data from the past 15 years that shows that 90% of students do just as well, and in many cases better, when they use non-animal teaching methods compared to dissection. And this is data that the Society for Humane Science collected. It's done in what's called a systematic review. So that's a very rigorous way of doing a literature review. It's actually its own experiment. And this is actually hot off the press data. I've had someone working with me. We're going to publish it soon. But this data has never been publicly presented. So you are lucky ducks this morning. Anyhow, the point being that under the principle of replacement, dissection should have ended at least 10 years ago. And it's pretty much case closed when we look at those principles and apply them properly. But here's the rub. Science teachers are not taught about the 3 R's in their teacher training programs, and students aren't taught about the 3 R's in early science education. And so the harmful and unnecessary practice of dissection persists. So we need to change the way that we teach science, and I think we need to change that in 2 key ways. The first is by ending dissection, and the second is by making sure that the 3 R's are taught in science education earlier. Like, we teach them to graduate students, but I think that we need to start talking about the 3 R's much earlier in science education. And I think that by doing so, we can avoid scenes like this, where animal life is taken for no discernible educational benefit. And what's more, in situations like this animal life is being disrespected. And so I really believe that we can raise a generation of young scientists who are encouraged to lean into the natural empathy and compassion that they have for animals, rather than having to dissociate themselves from those qualities in the name of science. So in 2018, as part of my charity work, I established Canada's first humane science education program. And this program teaches K through 12 life science content without using a single real animal. And we do teach internal anatomy. So here's what humane science education looks like. We use virtual anatomy tools. We use paper dissections where you build your animal. And then at the back there, there's a plastic frog model where you can take your animal apart. And we do also use augmented and virtual reality technology. And I'm going to demo some of these things for you later on in the talk. So that's what humane science education can look like. And this is the topic over which Nandita and I connected. She can tell you her story, but I've been so privileged to work with her students who are also champions on this issue in their school. So I'll let her take it from here and tell you what is going on at University of Toronto Schools.
Thank you, Elisabeth. So just a little extra background about me is I currently work as an administrator at an independent school. It's a middle and high school in Toronto called University of Toronto Schools. And I am also the science liaison, so I work very closely with the science department. I, at one point, was a science teacher. I graduated and worked in the field of engineering for a few years before moving into education. And I worked as a science teacher in the public board for about 7 years, where I engaged in the practice of dissection with my students without really questioning it. It's not something that I enjoyed. The experience overwhelmed me, like many of my students, but it was more the ick factor that really I found distasteful about dissection, not so much from a perspective of compassion for the animals. It wasn't until much later on that I kind of had an awakening in the animal protection movement. And it was actually fast forward a few years later when my husband and I, we adopted our first dog, Maggie. And for some of you who were on the last presentation, you might have already heard this story. Yes, we both had our awakening into the animal protection movement at the same time because of the same reason, which is one beautiful being. So her story was deeply painful for us. So if you click next, Elisabeth, it shows a picture of Maggie. So Maggie, we adopted her from a rescue organization, but as we found out more about her history, it was quite devastating to learn that she came from a breeding puppy mill. She was used as a breeding dog for about 5 to 6 years, had her litters constantly taken away, and lived her entire life in a cage with neglect and suffering. And that was really when we started looking at animals in a drastically different way and started connecting Maggie's stories to the stories of all the other animals whose suffering is often invisible to us. And that is really when we both kind of took a deep dive into the animal protection movement, started visiting lots of sanctuaries. That's a photo at Farm Sanctuary with a beautiful pig. And also what started me on my educational journey to learn more about how to leverage my background in education and this newfound passion towards animal protection and bring it into the school. And that's when we found this amazing institute, Institute for Humane Education, that offers an education in 3 pillars: animal protection, human rights, environmental ethics, how they all intersect. and also how to bring that into our world. And that is where I had this amazing fortune to meet Elisabeth as well through that journey. Since then, I have started running an animal justice club at my school. And through that club, I was, my students actually, we started looking at many different areas to help raise awareness at our school. And more recently, one of the interesting ones that came up was dissection. And it's something, when I was a teacher, I had never really considered, but because I was a science teacher, it's something that was quite familiar to me. And my students' experience was more of an exclusionary one at the school. And that's where I speak about a little bit into a deeper dive I started taking through my courses in humane education, and then having really amazing discussions with the science department. So if you go to the next slide, in my investigation, I started learning about interesting things. I dove into the Ontario curriculum to see what does the curriculum say about dissection. And if you see here, dissection is actually not a required practice in order to graduate from high school. Our curriculum documents, at least in Ontario, clearly specify that students could engage in a lab or a computer simulated dissection in order to learn about organ systems. Same thing with grade 11, it's not required. And then furthermore, it is neither a condition of graduation or a prerequisite for entrance into medical schools. And then I also learned that neither the AP College Board Biology nor the International Baccalaureate program required dissection in order to get that certificate. So this was really interesting to me because often practices are difficult to change because we are bound by restrictions or curriculum in the curriculum. And in this case, the curriculum has actually, it's quite open and leaves it up to the teachers. And as I started digging deeper, I recognized what my own teaching looked like in grade 9 and grade 10. So in grade 9 curriculum, we have students. So Elisabeth, if you click next for both of them, you can see there are some inconsistencies in our messaging in our own scientific teaching. In grade 9 in Ontario for science, we teach ecosystems, and one of the main curriculum requirements or expectations for students is to demonstrate an understanding of the dynamic nature of ecosystems, particularly in terms of ecological balance and the impact of human activity on the sustainability of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. And then in grade 10, when we have them engage in the practice of frog dissection, we are going completely against what we taught them in grade 9, which is we are killing inhumanely 3 million frogs for a one-time use in Canadian high school dissections, which leads to a depletion of local populations, disruption in biodiversity, and ecological balance. So, you know, really a big juxtaposition to what the messages that we're sending to our students. And the last part was I started having interesting discussions with my students in the Animal Justice Club. And I actually invited Elisabeth to meet with our science department. And I felt that Elisabeth was really perfectly placed to speak to this, not only because she runs the Humane Science program, But she also has a background in biology major. I did engineering. I'm not a bio major, so I didn't feel I had enough credibility to speak about the efficacy or lack thereof of dissection. And the science teachers, when I brought to their attention what some of the concerns that the students were raising around the exclusionary practice of dissection, and really the main concern was there's no written policy for students to opt out of physical dissection unless they advocate for it themselves. And at that age, it's really difficult for students to stand out and to advocate for themselves, especially in an environment where animal protection is barely talked about. So Elisabeth did a superb job speaking to our teachers about the importance of looking at alternatives, not only because they're technologically more advanced for student learning, but also because it honors the experience of students with a variety of different learning preferences, social emotional preferences, religious views, or ethical beliefs. And we are now in the midst of a really interesting change in our school, where we are looking at primarily moving to virtual dissections as an alternative, as a possibility. And in order to help teachers look at what the possibilities were, I connected with our IT department at the school and looked at all of the different options that were available with Elisabeth's help. And to help teachers, because time really is a big limitation when it comes to looking for alternatives in teaching, I took it upon myself to help look at what some of the restrictions were within our school. So at UTS, we are a BYOD school, so bring your own device. And the other piece was we wanted to make sure that the alternatives that we were recommending to our teachers were not more expensive than dissection. And so I created this case study where I looked at the operating system technology needs, wanted to make sure that students with different devices can all use that app, whatever it is we go with, and that it was an effective tool, as well as it was an economically feasible thing for us to move towards. So here are the green as some of the ones that were excellent tools. Teachers had a chance to go into it. Elisabeth actually met with them to demonstrate some of these tools and help them go through the curriculum expectations. And then the next slide is the tools that didn't quite make the cut, either because of technological restrictions or because they were too expensive at this time for our school. And then the final slide shows that with the proposal that the science teachers and I came up with for not this current year, but the following year, is the replacement of actual animals with dissection alternatives ended up in savings of around $3,000 for our school. And I've talked to a couple of other schools where the savings are quite similar for about 120 grade 9, 120 students in each grade. So that's about how big our school is. And I know Elisabeth might speak about this later, but the best part about these alternatives is they are licenses. Some of them are lifetime licenses. So you don't have to keep purchasing these apps. And I will stop there, pass it back over to Elisabeth to show you some of these amazing models. And I'll be happy to take more specific questions about either my case study or the club or any of it. Thank you.
Nandita, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So in your table here, it says $1,100 for the dissection alternatives cost. And then it says, like, I'm assuming that /A means per annum.
Yes.
But is that the cost of the things that are annual licenses, or does this include those one-time costs for that 1 year that wouldn't recur?
Yeah, so I think it the ones we decided to go with were annual licenses that had to be renewed.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
This is good for me to know too.
Yes.
So I wanted to thank you so much, Nandita. I think that learning how a school case study has actually handled the implementation of these dissection alternatives is really rich. And I think that at one point I would love to work with you on a blog post so that we can share with other schools. And based on, you know, Nandita's experience and engaging with other teachers who have booked guest classes with us and helped us with our materials, we've refined what we call our Humane Science education program. So I wanted to, let me see what slide's next. Okay. I wanted to show participants in this webinar some of the materials that we have as part of our science education program. So the first thing that we do is we provide unit plans on body systems. And just a note to say that the provincial curriculum is slightly different between provinces. I've aligned our lesson plans and unit plans with the BC curriculum. And the reason that I did that first is because we're based here. And so the majority of the work that we are piloting is in BC, but also because the BC curriculum is freely available online and it is incredibly comprehensive. And you don't just have to scroll down a PDF document to see what your requirements are as a teacher, but it is much the same as the Ontario curriculum that Nandita described, where there's no requirement for dissection that's listed in our curriculum. It is very much left at individual teacher discretion about whether they use dissection as a teaching tool or not. What I will say is that a lot of people who really care about this issue have asked if we would advocate for a provincial ban on dissection from the Ministry of Education. We looked into doing that, and the BC School Act actually prohibits the minister or the ministry from being prescriptive about teaching methods. So they can't say you can or can't do this or do X, Y, and Z as a teacher. They leave a lot of educational practices just solely up to teachers. And so a lot of this work is very grassroots. It's going and actually speaking with individual teachers and shifting science culture little by little and changing the culture of an individual school and then a school district and then the province. So I just wanted to say that ahead of time in case there is a question about, well, can we not just have a federal ban on dissection? I wish it was as simple, and it just unfortunately isn't. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. And instead, I will share with you the lesson plans that I have. So let me share my desktop for a moment. So I'll share that. And then so here's take you back to the beginning. Here's our rat anatomy unit plan. And by a unit plan, it's a series of lesson plans within one document. So this would take a teacher through about 7 weeks worth of material if you're doing a whole unit on body systems, as is outlined in the BC grade 5 and 6 curriculum. So you can see here that we have a table of contents so you can easily find your material. And here's where we have our statement of curriculum alignment. So in grade 5, the big ideas covered are that multicellular organisms have organ systems that help them survive and interact with their environment. And in grade 6, the big idea is that multicellular organisms rely on internal systems to survive, reproduce, and interact with their environment. And when you dig down into the curriculum specifics, it's these grades where students will do their first deep dive into each individual body system. So if we go down, I've got some kind of fun facts all about rats to help orient the teacher if you're using rats as your species of choice to teach about body systems. I have the recommended anatomy software that there's many more, but these are the ones that we use in our guest classes. So that's why I link to those ones. We are always sure to make sure that we present these ideas and these unit plans in ways that are just very implementable by teachers. So we've listed for the entire unit the goals, objectives, materials, how to introduce the materials, development questions, and how you apply this in practice. And that is repeated throughout the unit plan for each body system. So each lesson will focus on a different body system, and here they are all laid out here. So we have respiratory, circulatory, digestive, urogenital, nervous and sensory, endocrine, and musculoskeletal. So if I take you through our digestive system here, and I just noticed that I need to edit this and put the original list in the right order. So here we have the major organs associated with that body system. So mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, pancreas, liver, large intestine. We get into development questions to do inquiry-based learning with students, which is very much a focus of the BC curriculum. And inquiry-based learning simply means that you are anchoring discussions in what students already know. So you're empowering them with their own knowledge and then using what they already know as a springboard to talk about other ideas and develop their knowledge further. So we have these worksheets. So this is the teacher copy, but once the students have done their learning, they can label this themselves. We have the musculoskeletal system with major bones for the rat skeleton, and again, the student version. So you get the idea. So each body system has the big ideas, how to teach about it. The students will use virtual anatomy tools to help them do things like label this diagram. And then this can also be used as an evaluation piece afterwards as well. So it's not just a learning exercise. You can actually repeat it later and see if they retained what it was that they learned. So this is our rat anatomy unit plan. We have individual lesson plans for human anatomy. This is grade 12. So fetal pigs are often used to teach about human anatomy. So one of the reasons that we do a lot of human stuff, which might seem a little alien if you think that we are more of an animal-centered charity, is that if we are to replace animals effectively, then if you're learning about human anatomy, I fully believe that it's better to use human-focused models to do that. And so we guide teachers through this process. So they're laid out very much the same. You've got your table of contents, but this time, because it's grade 12, they are way more detailed. So I'm going to just spring down to an example page here. So if we're learning about the stomach in detail, for example, we have these interesting questions to pose to students, like why doesn't the stomach digest itself? I think these are just really fun questions. And then the types of stomach cells, the mechanism by which peptides are broken down into individual amino acids, stomach anatomy in detail so that the students can actually look at these beautiful diagrams and see inside. And this is paired with human anatomy apps where they can take a look at these organs and see them in 3D or augmented or virtual reality. And I'll show you some of those in a bit too. So we've spent many hours developing these lesson plans and unit plans in collaboration with teachers. The next thing I wanted to show you is a few of the apps that I do use to complement or to be instructive when we do our own lesson plans, and also when we when we do our own guest classes, and also when I work with teachers to show them how they can implement non-animal methods. So I wanted to start out with, let's say, the 3D frog anatomy here. This is one of my favorite ones, and I know that it's on Nandita's list as well, so it's good to use this one. Our frog is Portuguese, so or Spanish rather, let's put it to English. So this is actually not a virtual dissection. There's no simulated cutting. There's no taking your animal apart. Our frog will kind of stay in this whole state, if you like. And so psychologically, I really like that for humane education. There's a really interesting psychological difference when, you know, if we have these tools where we can create a different reality, then I don't know why we would simulate a harmful reality. I don't know why you would stick with trying to dissect an animal. So what we can do in this case is these buttons down the side here, they allow us different control over what we see in our frog. So I'm going to take away the skin. So there we can see our frog skeleton, and it's literally just a window into our frog without the simulated cutting or harmful practice. So if we want to take a look at our frog's internal system, we would usually put it on its back, not simply because that's how you would do a dissection, but because if I put it on its front, the spine is always going to be in the way. So we'll put our frog on its back. If we wanted to focus in on the digestive system, for example, we can take a look at the organs in the digestive system from any angle in the body. And so I think this educationally, pedagogically is much richer for students, other than just going in one direction. In a real dissection, you would only ever see things in this orientation because your frog is pinned to its tray. Whereas with this anatomy tool, you can actually see things from the side, from the back, from underneath. You get the idea. And you can click on each item and it will tell you what it is. Now, the one thing this app does not do is tell you what the function of the liver is and how it connects with other body systems. So what we've done as a charity is we've created student workbooks that go alongside this particular app. And those are available as part of our teacher subscription packages. So not only would you have access to your lesson plan, but you would have access to a student workbook that guides your students not only through the names and orientation of all the organs, but also what they do. So that is the 3D frog anatomy app by Biosfera. And I'm yet to engage the company, but because we've created student workbooks that enhance their own product, I'm going to be seeking out some corporate partnership at some point soon. For human anatomy purposes, this is a beautiful app called 3D Anatomica. I do still use it for our guest classes. Unfortunately, they have stopped offering their tablet version, which is the one I'm showing you today. So you need to go to their website and you can get desktop versions. Everything's still in kind of a transitional development with them. That's my understanding. And I really hope that they do bring this back soon so that it's available to everybody else too. But I want to show you, let's just stick with our theme of the digestive system, why not? So I'm going to click, these are clickable links. I'll click this button right here. And we can see that we can take a look around the human digestive system. And if I look at the stomach, we can take a close-up look and look at the inside, and we can teach about that internal anatomy, like what does the inside of the stomach actually look like? What are the different sections? What do they do? Why is the esophageal sphincter important? So you can use the app to really get that detailed knowledge for older students that need more detail. So again, anything with a little information sign next to it, I can click in and it tells me all about the structure, function, why these particular tissues and structures in the body are important and what they do. Another thing that I wanted to show you, because it is it's up for grabs, we're offering as a prize today, is the merge cube. So I'll just, let me stop sharing for one moment. So this is what the merge cube looks like. It looks kind of like hieroglyphics, and it's squishy, very safe. You can throw it around, do whatever. Very safe for younger students. And these hieroglyphics on the outside, they operate like a QR code in lots of ways. So what I'm going to show you is that I'm pointing my iPad at the cube. And because I've got a certain app open called Anatomy AR for Merge Cube, it'll turn the cube into a human brain and a human heart and a set of human lungs. So let me do that. And I can show you what we mean here. So I'll share my iPad screen with you. Hopefully you'll see that in a moment. There we go. All right. So it will detect the cube, and you can see that that cube is now a human brain that I can hold in my hands, and it'll tell me a little bit of educational material in that little circle there. And then the top right hand where it says next with those two arrows, if I click on that, we get to see the inside of the human brain and the amygdala, the hippocampus, and where all those things are in relation to each other. That's called the limbic system. And then the next one is the basal nuclei. So we get to take a deep dive into the very internal brain structures. And again, it tells us a little bit about the function of these brain regions, but you can add on your own educational materials that go in conjunction with these. And that's what our lesson plans do. So here's the human heart. I think this is one of the most beautiful augmented reality renderings of a human heart that certainly I've ever seen. All of your major blood vessels are back here. You can see the heart actually beating. You can see a lot of detail. So Merge have done a really amazing job. This is just one app. If you buy the cube, the app is free, but they also have an educator license. So they have Merge Explorer, which is you can get an educator license. And in Merge Explorer, they have an augmented reality frog dissection. They have all kinds of stuff. And if you're not a biologist, they have like volcanoes and chemistry experiments and all kinds of stuff just in this one cube. I should also say that with the Merge Cube, they do also you can buy a headset and stick your smartphone in there. So if you have the app on your smartphone and you use the goggles, then that's a virtual reality experience as well. So we're giving away a Merge Cube and a headset today to some lucky winners. I'm sure Serene is going to steward that process. The other thing that we offer, so not all of our materials are subscription based, so all of that stuff will be subscription based, but we also offer some free resources on our website. And one of my favorites is this free online database where if you are interested in looking up, whether you're a parent or a student or a teacher, if you are interested in what non-animal methods for teaching are available to you, then we've curated this website based on feedback from teachers on what really works for them. So if you were just left alone with Google, there are hundreds of things for you to wade through, and that would take a huge amount of time. But if you know you want to do a frog class, you can type frog into this search bar here. It will bring up all the things that we've tried, tested, we know work. Even if we don't use them ourselves, we only recommend things that are things like cost accessible, implementable in the classroom, things like that. So those things are on our website. And I should say our website is forhumanescience.org, and I'll put the URL up at the end. So I think just in closing, through Nandita's experience and my work to date on our Humane Science education program, I've come to the position that dissection can end tomorrow with no discernible impact, negative impact to anybody, really. And in fact, ending dissection would carry with it a whole host of really tangible benefits. So Nandita's already really beautifully laid out the cost savings that her school have made in just 1 year. They're safer, more inclusive for students. Teachers don't have to set up a messy lab, think about safe disposal of animal bodies afterwards. Another thing that has come to light where, I'm cautious about this conversation because I'm white and I'm British, but I've worked with Indigenous educators, and the individuals that I've interacted with have been extremely clear that from their perspective, dissection does not represent Indigenous perspectives in our schools. It runs counter to the respect for animals that is a really strongly adhered to cultural norm in their communities. And so moving forward, we're actually going to be doing a lot more engagement with Indigenous educators to properly understand that perspective. But I just wanted to say it because I think it's very powerful, especially because, at least in British Columbia, the Ministry of Education requires now that teachers better represent Indigenous perspectives in their classrooms. So if we can be one small step to providing concrete ways of supporting that effort, that reconciliation effort in BC schools, then I will be very proud to be able to offer that. Nandita, is there anything else that you want to add?
I'm good for now, Elisabeth. I'll be happy to answer any questions that come up later.
Yeah. Just very quickly then, before we get into a discussion, because I do see that there's some chat in the chat box. We are funded by a whole host of different foundations. They're all listed here. We are extremely grateful to their support. Recently, we just got a grant from the McLean Foundation, so we're very grateful to them. We're in partnership with the Animal Welfare Institute down in the US. We are partners of the Humane Education Coalition, so if there's anybody on the call today who is interested in humane education, that's a really amazing coalition, chock full of resources. I know Peace are a member. We are a member of Humane Canada, and I'm an advisor to the Canadian Centre for Alternatives on Animal Methods. Here's where you can find at least me, and I would always be happy to connect you with Nandita with her permission as well. Like I say, we did just change our society name. There might be things out there under our old name, but for now we are at forhumanescience.org, and all of our social media handles are for Humane Science, and my email address is at the bottom. So I will, I guess, momentarily leave that up. I do want to stop my screen share so I can see the chat at some point, but maybe someone else who can see the chat can read out questions.
So how far in advance would you need to talk to your child's teacher about implementing these as options so it's set up in time to replace real animal dissection?
That's a really good question. You know, if you know that you don't, I don't think there's such a thing as being too early about it, as long as you know who your child's, at least in BC, grade 5 and 6 teacher is going to be, and then their grade 12 teacher. So at the moment in the BC curriculum, dissection would prevalently be done in those particular grades. You know, if a teacher is super stuck and you just, if they send a letter home and say, hey, your kid's going to be doing dissection next week and you want them to opt out, you can contact me. And if I have availability, then I'm available tomorrow to just take on the delivery of a class for your student and whoever else wants to opt out. So that's something that the charity does. That's what we provide to you. But I don't think I don't think you could ask too early. I know that's probably really unhelpful. It's better to get teacher buy-in.
Kind of thing, like as soon as you know, go and talk kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's better to get teacher buy-in nice and early, because then there's less pushback because they feel involved in the process. Yeah.
Great. So yeah, thank you so much again, both of you, for taking the time and coming out. I'm so amazed and grateful for everything you both do. So thank you for that. And
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Serene, for having us.
No, anytime.